want to talk to you today about the 5-shot system that we've been talking about here on thevj.com. But more significantly, I want to talk to you about video as a language, as opposed to as taking a camera out and just shooting a bunch of stuff and seeing what happens, because this is a very significant and different point. Language has taken a long time to develop in human history, particularly written language. And what makes written language work, what made written language so powerful, was that these very broad concepts that language uses to communicate ideas, and that's what language is after all, it's a way that we communicate ideas with one another. What makes language work, particularly in terms of written language, is that we are able to take very big ideas and squash them down into something that's very comprehensible, and these are essentially the words that we use. The transition from a spoken culture to a written culture, which occurred beginning about 5,000 years ago, was able to happen because we were able to take these giant, long, complicated ideas and reduce them down to a very simple system by which anybody could make words out of, in English, only 26 symbols. If you think about that, that's pretty remarkable. Using only 26 symbols, we were able to communicate the entire spectrum of human experience, of knowledge, of teaching, of transiting very complicated ideas, down to simply learning these 26 symbols that we use over and over and over again to reproduce and create an infinity of ideas. Remarkable. That's the printed word. And that's what made the printed word so powerful, and that's what transited us from being a verbal culture to a written culture. Now we're at the moment of being transited from being a written culture to a video culture. And we can't think of video as this big, messy thing that does an infinity of stuff. We'll never really be able to take control of it and wrap our heads around it. Video is a language, just like English is a language, and English has a print system based on these 26 characters. Now, I got these ideas because I'm reading a fascinating book called Information by James Gleick, and it's the story of human interaction with information cultures. Gleick's real interest here is in the computer revolution. In the 1940s, Claude Shannon, who was a scientist working with Bell Labs, came up with this idea that any concept, any word, and music, video, anything could be translated down to digital numbers, zeros and ones essentially. This is the beginning of the digital revolution. It's a remarkable idea, not dissimilar from the revolution that happened 5,000 years ago in print, when giant ideas were being distilled down to these 26 interchangeable things. Shannon realized that you could take this enormous idea of pretty much anything. He was the first person to come up with the idea and say that everything in human experience could be translated down to a series of zeros and ones, offs and ons, when computers were first being built. This is a breathtaking moment of intellectual insight, because it's the foundation of the entire digital world in which we live today. Again, it's taking big ideas and instead of explaining them in these linear and analog ways, which is how everything had been done before, it's the ability to transmute everything into a series of interchangeable, very simple integers, in this case, zeros and ones. This is what made the digital revolution possible, and what took computers from being essentially very sophisticated adding machines that only crunch numbers to the machinery that we have today, which essentially crunches and translates and communicates everything that we had. Now, as we move from a print world to a video world, we have to do the same thing with video. In other words, we have to take video, which is very broad and wide and covers everything, and we take cameras and wave them around and take pictures of things and get complicated edits, and we have to also distill this down into a workable, fragmentable language that only uses very simple symbols, like the binary off and on zeros and ones, or like the 26 letters of English. The 5-shot method, which you're familiar with, which we came up with a long time ago around here to simplify making video, is actually the groundwork of this sort of digitization of communicating ideas in video. If you just use the 5 shots that we talk about here on thevj.com in terms of the 5-shot system, and you just focus on those, close up on the hands, close up on the face, over the shoulder, wide shot, side shot, and a couple of sound bites, you have essentially building blocks, simple building blocks, with which you can pretty much communicate any idea that you want to in the medium of video, the way an alphabet allows you to communicate any idea in the medium of print, the way zeros and ones allows you to communicate any idea in the digital binary world of computer processing. Video is not taking the camera, turning it on, and doing something in front of it. Communicating ideas in video is about using this incredibly powerful medium, which is about picture and sound and text and graphics and everything else, as a medium of communicating ideas, emotions, perspectives, thoughts, concepts, passion. It's an incredibly powerful medium, as powerful as writing, but different. And if we use it as an adjunct to writing, that is, if we write a script and then sit and read the narration and smack some pictures on the front of it, we only leverage off 5% of what this medium is capable of. Instead, we have to start thinking of the medium of video as something distinct and new, but also something manageable. And that's why we've come up with this 5-shot system. It's the grammatization, to coin a word, grammarization, of a new language of communication. So that's what the 5 shots really are. It's not a simple way of shooting. It's not a way of getting rid of directors and producers and stuff like that. It's not an idiot kind of television. It's the groundwork of the grammar of the language of video. And that's something very significant.